Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Bacha, and I serve as the Director of Communications for the Ohio Environmental Council. For more than 50 years, the Ohio Environmental Council has worked to implement forward-thinking, science-based, pragmatic solutions to secure healthy air, land, and water for all who call Ohio home. More importantly, we've added democracy to our portfolio of work because we know that we cannot have a healthy environment without a healthy democracy. As the communications director at the OEC, it is my job to message out on this important mission to all Ohioans, as well as our policymakers. Each and every day, I am leveraging media communications for the advocacy work that we do to ensure a healthier environment for all. And I'm happy to speak with you a little bit about those skills today. And again, leveraging media communications for your advocacy work. So today we're going to review a couple of different pieces. We are going to go from the personal to the professional to the public. So telling your personal story about why you are interested in the work to create a healthier climate and a healthier environment for all Ohioans. We're going to shift to how to be a trusted messenger. Clinicians and primary care doctors and providers, you are all trusted messengers already, so we're going to hone in on the ways in which you can really leverage those facts as well as your position as a trusted messenger to communicate. And finally, we will go to the public and how you are connecting with the media. So first, let's talk about developing your story. This may seem slightly out of order when we get to the middle part of our presentation, but the story is foundational to your advocacy work. You are here today because you care about advocating for the climate, I'm guessing, and that you care about the climate's impacts on health for your patients and the communities in which you serve. What drove you to attend today? What drove you to care about those issues? There's a story there, and again, that is foundational to all advocacy work. Let's get into sharing why you care, and I will first share a story about why I care. I feel incredibly privileged that I grew up in the Forest City, Cleveland, Ohio. I had a family that encouraged me to opt outside at a young age, and that really sparked a love of the great outdoors. One of my most vibrant memories as a child, though, was when the great outdoors was threatened. I distinctly remember that they were fixing up the street in front of our house, a red brick road, tall trees on either side, really out of a story brook. And when they said that they were going to come down our street and not only take out all of the red brick, but take out all of the trees along the way, I was devastated. I was about 8 years old, and I took that devastation and knocked on the mayor's door down the street and said, "Mayor, why are you taking down these trees?" And he encouraged me to write a letter to our city council and to encourage others on our street to do the same. And so 8-year-old Emily decided that it was time to start a campaign to save the trees on our street. And I really think that that was the moment that sparked a love of advocacy. I couldn't wrap my arms around the tree in our front yard, and to lose that was really devastating to me in so many ways. And so the trees did end up coming down, but the passion to save the trees and to continue to act on environmental issues was just ignited even more. I dove into environmental science issues throughout middle school and high school. I studied environmental science in undergrad and earned my master's in urban and environmental planning, knowing that environmental planning could help fight climate change. Somewhere along the way, I fell into communications after graduate school, and I've been lucky to put that skill set to work to not only advocate for the environmental issues I'm so passionate about, but to communicate those to others. One of the ways in which I have done that is, as an adult, trees are still very important to me. The entire mission of the OEC is really important to me, but in particular, I know that I can act on climate by planting trees in my backyard and in my neighborhood here in Cleveland. And that small action and that small action with my neighbors can help us fight climate change here in the city. And so while it may not seem like bold policy action in the moment, we are mitigating the impacts of climate change and the negative health impacts of losing our large trees. Maybe not as large as the photo on the right-hand side, but certainly making improvements in our environment to create a healthier environment for all. Part of my work has been working with the Cleveland Tree Coalition to help advocate for the planting of new trees in Cleveland and preservation of some of those larger trees, and so that we can take action and we can meet the environmental challenges of our day by planting trees that help absorb carbon dioxide and store carbon to combat the increasing impacts of climate change. That is just my short story. I don't know that it is as riveting as maybe some of yours, but it is important to me. So that moment from my childhood into my studies and then into my adulthood as not only an advocate, but also a neighborhood activist in helping plant trees in my neighborhood. And this brings me to the fact that stories sometimes help elicit new emotions. So I hope that you could sense the passion that I had as a young child and that I still do today. People will seek out new information to confirm a belief, but stories can create a new emotional response. Stories have the power to persuade and move people to action. And we have studies that show that stories can be, more than 20 times more memorable than facts alone. And that can really help you and I make the case for why a policymaker should stand behind a cause, whether that is planting new trees to combat climate change or another really important policy angle. Stories are a powerful advocacy tool. They can change hearts and minds that facts might not be able to do. Stories can direct people's attention and bring issues to life and really create that palpable sense of connection that is so important when we are advocating for such big issues. So I will say it again, your story is foundational to your advocacy. And we'll touch on this a little bit later, but just wanting to help you craft your story. Here are some different elements in which you can start to think through how to craft your story about what brought you into this movement to combat climate change as a clinician, as a healthcare provider. You can be the hero of your own story. It is okay. So let's go through these moments or go through these elements here. Who is the hero of the story? What makes the hero relevant and relatable to the audience? Where and when is the hero at the beginning of the story? This could be you. This could be a patient. This could be a provider in your network that you are close to. We should talk about the conflict. What creates conflict in the life of the hero and what spurs them to action? What is that moment that makes them say, this isn't okay and I want something better for myself, my community, my environment? What is the challenge? So where are there complications and barriers within that challenge? Let's talk about the choice. What changes the direction from the challenge? So that choice that the hero makes in the story that says, I'm not going to stand by, but I'm going to take action. And that outcome, what happens as a result? And finally, crafting your story, it's always great to end with a solution. What has the hero gained or learned? What can others learn from the story? And what action are you calling for? So if I had shared my story the way that I had prepared originally, but didn't necessarily deliver on, I would have called on you as our audience to think about a bold policy action that you can take in your city, in your neighborhood, in your region to combat climate change. And for any of you in Cleveland, I would encourage you to reach out to the Cleveland Tree Coalition and to really dig in on ways in which we can reforest the forest city. So again, just reviewing those story crafting elements. You should talk about the hero, the conflict that is presented, any challenges along the way, the choice that the hero is making in the story, the outcome, what happens when the hero makes that choice, and the solution in the end. And making sure that you add in, again, that action that you are calling for. The story is foundational to your advocacy message. But let's talk a little bit about crafting your message and utilizing your position as a trusted messenger. I work in communications and I rely heavily on trusted messengers to help us share out the message about why we need to take action to protect the air, land, and water for all Ohioans. You are a trusted messenger. Clinicians are among the most credible messengers on the importance of environmental protection and climate action. There are specific studies that cite that primary care doctors are widely trusted for information about climate change, and then Americans respond to messages about climate change that emphasize public health. Americans trust their doctors and other health professionals as credible informants on climate change. You have the potential to reach and motivate a vast and diverse population of Americans to also take action on climate themselves and help protect their health. So one of the ways in which you can refine your methods of talking about climate and health as a trusted messenger is to follow these guidelines set out by a publication and study done by Eco America and Climate for Health in 2016. There are a number of tried and true methods that the researchers walked through to see what climate messages stuck, how they stuck, why they stuck, and this is the listing of those tried and true methods and the order in which they should be deployed when talking about climate and health, again, as that trusted public messenger. So you should start with people and stay with people in your messaging. Putting people first and conveying climate action as a moral responsibility to protect families' health works. It helps people relate not only to this large topic, but to put themselves in the shoes of those that you were chatting with. You should connect on common values. And this involves not only understanding the audience's priorities, concerns, and values, but then relating that into your story. So common values such as family, community, our choice and freedom, as well as our health and fairness, creating an equitable climate for all. Those are powerful motivators and connectors that you can chat more about in your work when you talk on climate and health. That is a tried and true method. It's okay to acknowledge ambivalence. So people approach climate from different perspectives and have different levels of concern. And we all have a number of competing priorities in our lives. So a simple line like, some of us are more worried about how climate change affects our health than others, may be a good level set when messaging on the impacts of climate so that folks understand that this is a priority to you and that you understand that there may be other priorities as well. We should always make it real. So sometimes it is easy to think about climate change as a far off, distant concern, but focusing on some of the local realities that people can see with their own eyes and their own communities helps make climate change relevant to them. So here in Cleveland, if I were to go back to my story about why I think that local policy on planting and preserving of trees is important, I can talk about the fact that when we have large storm events, large rainfall events, we don't have the trees to absorb that stormwater, and we are seeing the effects downstream and into Lake Erie. Using those real life examples helps focus on the facts and the realities of climate change impacts in our communities. And then moving from making it real, we should emphasize solutions. There are so many tangible local examples of climate solutions in our own backyards. And if you have trouble identifying those, I can tell you that we have plenty of folks here at the OEC that can help point out some of those climate solutions that are happening across the state that are available here and now that are helping create safe and healthy communities that protect families' health, from local solar and wind systems to developing cleaner transportation and energy storage systems, to again, those policies that help reduce carbon pollution. There are any number of solutions out there that are tangible and that we can share out in our messaging. Next, we want to inspire and empower. And this is important. There's a lot of folks out there that feel that they can't make a difference, that they don't make a difference when it comes to climate change. Almost everything we do, from what we drive to how we eat to how we talk about climate change, affects the people around us. So the positive choices that we are making and the positive choices that we are sharing with others can help inspire and empower them to adopt that can-do attitude, and that we can lead on climate at so many different levels, from our local levels to our state level to the national level. It's okay, and it's encouraged to talk about the personal benefit that comes with climate action. And that's not just about saving money by saving energy, or becoming healthier by eating locally grown food, biking or walking instead of driving. These are all really important, but you can talk about those, again, those local or those personal benefits coming with those personal choices to act on climate. Finally, you should end with your ask. This again goes back to the story, and when you're telling your personal story, that you should end with the ask of those who you're speaking with to take action on climate, and to take action on climate for all of the reasons above, for those common values, for those real-time impacts, for those solutions that are within our reach. There are so many reasons in which we should act on climate, so be sure to take that to make that ask rather. A couple more keys for success when you are talking about climate action and health. So the first is describe, don't label. Again, this comes from that 2016 study, but I can tell you that it happens every day in my job as well. Jargon and labels confuse people and sometimes can bring up negative associations. You should avoid terms like mitigation, adaptation, or complex health terminology that folks like me may not understand. The most persuasive language that you can use is vivid, familiar, and descriptive. So statements like, we need to slow and stop the pollution that is changing our climate and affecting our health is a lot clearer than we need to mitigate emissions that are causing climate change and creating adverse impacts on our health. Again, avoid the jargon, stick with vivid, familiar, descriptive language. Another key to success is having at least one powerful fact from a trusted messenger within the message that you're telling. And these messengers could be folks like the CDC or the National Climate and Health Assessment Report. Using at least one memorable and relevant quote within your communications on climate action and health can help your audience trust you more as a credible messenger. Again, you're already credible. This helps build up that credibility and can also add significant weight to your message. So in my messaging here, again, using the example of climate policy or tree policy affecting climate change, trees are helping absorb carbon dioxide out of the air and are helping create cleaner air for us to breathe, which is really important in my home county of Cuyahoga, where the American Lung Association State of the Air ranks us as not a healthy air quality location. Another key to success is to ditch the doom and gloom. I know I just talked about not living in a healthy air quality location at times. We know that folks are overwhelmed by negative information on climate that can cause them to disengage. So it's important to talk about those common values, those solutions, those benefits, empowering and inspiring folks to act, rather than just talking about the terrible pieces or the terrible impacts that climate change is causing on our society. The final key to success, this brings it back that you should use your story to strengthen engagement. Stories, again, are helping make your message relevant and vivid. They're helping you form the connection with the audience. And so don't be afraid to bring that story into your messaging as a trusted messenger on this. The final piece of what we're going to discuss today, so we've gone from the personal story to the professional messaging, and now we're going to talk about connecting with the media, really that public facing aspect of what we're doing. And I'm going to shift from my personal stories here to some of the work that I am doing in collaboration with my colleagues here at the OEC on engaging the media on methane pollution and the importance of reducing methane pollution to reduce climate impacts, but also to improve the health of communities across Ohio. So there are opportunities to share your trusted message and to tell your story from the Statehouse to the media. And we're going to get into the different building blocks of that engagement. The first is the facts. So when I am messaging out on the impacts of methane pollution, these are my facts that I am sharing out with members of the media, and that my colleagues are sharing out with members of the legislature and members of Congress. And you can take a moment to read these here. But the basic highlights are more than 3 million Ohioans live within a half-mile of oil and gas development. Methane is a primary component of natural gas, and it's a potent greenhouse gas that is important to curb. And that when methane escapes from oil and gas development, it comes with other hitchhiker air pollutants that can cause life-threatening asthma attacks, aggravate respiratory conditions, and also increase a person's risk of developing cancer. When I am engaging with the media on this work, I also talk about the policies. So we have our facts in our back pocket. We want to talk about the policies in which we need to help protect our communities from the impacts of climate change and from exacerbating those impacts. So one of the policy pieces that we've been paying close attention to is the EPA's new source performance standards on methane emissions. And in August, we found out that the Trump administration had finalized its rule change eliminating methane protections from this new source performance standard. So we took those facts that we had and combined them with the policy that we were advocating for in a statement out to the press. This was a proactive press statement for us to share with the media, sharing our perspective on the issue. There's also the story piece of this. And so what is important to note here is that we can take our facts, we can take our policy, and we can weave in stories to help tell that larger story. And so there are two examples here, and I don't know that I have time to share, but we'll be sure to share these out in the Whova app for you. Stories from Jenny and Rebecca on the impacts of oil and gas development in their specific communities that are impacting the health of their family members and their community members. And so oftentimes when we get media calls or when we are advocating at the Statehouse, we are trying to share these stories that, again, help make our policy advocacy real. And there are any number of examples of these stories from, our conversations with Energy News Network, Allegheny Front, Reuters, on specifically these methane rules. Again, we do this for all of our advocacy areas at the OEC, but this is a really great example of how we take facts, policy, and stories and weave them together when engaging the media. And with that, I think there are two pieces on media engagement, two general media engagement strategies that I want to share with you as we're closing out our session. And so There are proactive media engagements and reactive media engagements. And so a proactive media engagement may look a little like that press release that I shared just a moment ago, where we are developing a pitch, whether that's a press release or a media advisory, inviting the media to an event where you are speaking about the pieces of advocacy or the policy pieces that you want to chat about. You are sending that media engagement out to the press, and you are following up with them to make sure that they are covering that event. The second piece is reactive media engagement. And this is when a member of the media calls you and they ask, you know, Dr. Bacha, I need to know more about the health impacts of methane pollution in Southeast Ohio. And so my strategy when I get those reactive or when I get those media calls and have to react is to first pause, get more information, check the media source, see what the journalist has written before, and ask about their deadline to make sure that you are preparing as much as you can before engaging with that member of the media on the subject matter. You can develop your key talking points in collaboration with colleagues or with the Ohio Clinicians for Climate Action Network. And then you follow up with that reporter on those specifics. Host that conversation, talk about the importance of your advocacy pieces, and then follow up with resources should they have questions. And so I will note that throughout this, you should remember to craft your message and to utilize your story as a trusted messenger in these media engagement strategies. So I know that we've left the engaging media portion to the end, but again, that crafting of the message and the story and utilizing your story and your position as a trusted messenger is key in dealing with members of the press, whether that is proactively engaging them in your advocacy work or reacting when they give you a call. So I have two final examples to share with you on this work. And the first is this specific proactive media pitch that I had the pleasure to be a part of. The OEC and Policy Matters Ohio put out a report late last year on the impacts of climate change on Ohio children's health. And we were able to host a press call, a media call, and answer reporter questions on the report, and specifically weave in stories and weave in important talking points throughout that conversation. And so you can see here on the slide from this report from Columbus Underground, also covered in the Columbus Dispatch and Cleveland.com, that we had Dr. Aparna Bowl, a member of Ohio Clinicians for Climate Action, talking about the importance of accelerating our transition to a clean energy and transportation options to act on climate now. Certainly, she expanded upon those in our press call, but really great quotes selected here. And our executive director, Heather Taylor Measley from the OEC, was on that call as well. And she was able to talk about OEC's advocacy work and specifically talking about the need to strengthen regulations to cut methane emissions to make sure that we have cleaner air to breathe for all of Ohio's communities. So this was our proactive pitch. We put together that media alert. We invited media to a press call. We shared out the report, had our talking points aligned, and were able to get some good coverage on this really important report. The last example I'll leave you with is a really exciting example for me as a communications director. It's not every day that you get a call from the New York Times, but we did in December of 2019. There was a report that there was a methane leak at a specific blowout that had happened in 2018, and they wanted to know our perspective on that case. And so we paused. We got our facts in order on that specific case, and we were able to not only pull in Miranda Lepla, our Vice President of Energy Policy at the OEC, to respond to the reporter's questions, but we were also able to line up another community story. So we were able to engage our Southeast Ohio Regional Director, Carol Davey, on that call and have her share, firsthand perspective of what was happening in the community when this blowout had happened. And together they were able to weave those policy talking points, weave their stories together to inform this story on a really serious issue, but also use that platforms to advocate again for strong methane emissions regulations, not only in the state of Ohio, but nationwide. So with that, I will end this session and again remind you that we've gone from talking about the personal to the professional to the public. So using your personal story to talk about your why, that helps elicit that emotional response and helps folks connect to why climate action is so important. To utilize your position as a professional communicator and professional climate action taker. Again, going through those steps that were outlined for us on how to best talk about climate change with your patients, on panels, things of that nature. And finally, going public, talking with the media about some of these specific needs for advocacy on climate action and taking that action to improve the public health of all those who call Ohio home. I look forward to joining you later on to answer any questions that you might have about leveraging your story and leveraging media connections for your advocacy. Thanks so much for tuning in.